Are the Giants legit, or is Green Bay's offensive woes just that bad?
I'll start with the Giants here. Kev, I'm going to be honest with you. I understand that they're 4-1, and it may be kind of a weird point to say, just that the NFC East is really competitive this year, and the Giants are a part of it. But this is going to come off as hating. When it comes to the Giants, I just don't know if I have faith in them long term. For the first 5 weeks, they've been solid. The only loss that they had was a competitive game against the Cowboys where they lost at home. They actually had some chances to win that game. They just kind of let it slip. But the one thing that I've seen from the Giants so far this year is they make some really good second half adjustments. And in this game in particular, I thought they did a fantastic job essentially locking down Green Bay in the second half. Because if I remember correctly, I think this game at halftime was 20-10. And it just seemed like the Packers were in a rhythm by and large through the first half. Aaron Rodgers, granted, there's still some issues when it comes to that wide receiving core and just not being able to lock up the chemistry with the younger receivers that they have, like Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs. But the first half, I thought they had a really good half, and then the Giants just locked it down defensively. And not only that, they took advantage of the Packers not being able to move the ball down the field in the second half. And they essentially scored 17 unanswered points, unless you count the freaking safety at the end of the game, which I don't really consider. That was just kind of a symbolic point at that point. But I just am really impressed with the Giants' ability to be able to just weather the storm and be able to just move the ball effectively in the second half. And granted, I've said a lot of things about Daniel Jones. I've never really been his biggest fan because he has a tendency to turn the ball over really consistently, but he didn't do that today. So he was able to lock it down as far as not being able to intercept the ball, not fumbling the ball. And as far as I see it, if Daniel Jones is not turning the ball over, it's at least giving that Giants offense a chance to be able to produce here. And Saquon Barkley, I understand that he's gone through some pretty significant injuries the last couple of years, but this is the healthiest that he's looked in probably the last 2 years. And he's having a really solid start. Now, granted, it wasn't his best day, but had 70 yards rushing, averaged about 5.5 yards per carry, had a tut. I mean, it's consistent. They definitely made a point of emphasis to run the ball against the Packers today. And I thought that by and large were successful. And I think that's just how they're going to do it. They're going to be able to own the time of possession and just make strides to eventually get into field goal range or to score points as far as touchdowns are concerned. And even though that I don't really see the Giants like being this super contender in the NFC, I still believe that there are better teams in that division, specifically with the Cowboys and the Eagles. But if they can maintain this moving forward, I think that there's a chance that they could maybe play upset, or they could definitely play. They could be like a Joker type of role coming later into the year. But a 4-1 start is nothing to be ashamed of. It's a really good start for them. I just don't know whether or not they're going to be able to maintain it. When it comes to the Packers, I'm not really too worried about them. They just couldn't score in the second half. Aaron Rodgers is just going to lock it down with the receivers. But I think that will kind of improve as time goes on. But yeah, giving up a 20-10 lead at halftime, got to be better than that. Can't give up 17 unanswered points to give the game away. But, we're 5 weeks into the season. There's still a lot of time left for the Packers to get into rhythm here. This is a game they probably should have won, but give credit where credit is due. I thought the Giants stepped up when the Packers couldn't capitalize to extend some drives, and the Giants made the most of it. So good on them for a 4-1 start. But like I said, I'm still a little bit iffy when it comes to the Giants. I don't know if I could trust them long term yet.
I'm hyped. I'm not a Giants fan, but I'm hyped. The Giants haven't had a record like this since 2009 where they were 5-0. Pretty sure that year they won the Super Bowl. No,
they didn't.
They won the Super Bowl the next year.
They won in 2007, 2008,
8?
and then 2011, 2012.
Right. Okay. So I'm a couple years off. Never mind.
I know because they did it to my team.
I know. So I'm a little bit off. But Daniel Jones, he had a freaking passer rating of 100, a QBR of 75, was sacked one time, no turnovers, no touchdown passes. But he didn't need to because everybody else was doing what they needed to do. They ran the ball effectively for over 125 yards in the ground and 3 rushing touchdowns. when your bread and butter is running the football with arguably the best back in the league this year, Saquon is him. That's because he's from the Bronx. We breed demons. You heard it here first. Um, dude, there's not much you can say. He had over 100 all-purpose yards. He made huge plays when it mattered the most. He did leave the game with what looked to be a shoulder injury, and he came back and he played great. Saquon Barkley looks like he is the Saquon of his rookie season. He seems to have put the injuries behind him, and he is doing what he needs to do to be a veteran on this team and lead them in the right direction. Now, the reason why I picked the Giants to lose this game was because the receiving core was empty. That's the word I'm going to use because I'm trying to be nice. Darius Slayton was the best receiver. They didn't have Galladay. They didn't have freaking Robinson. They didn't have Kadarius Toney. I mean, the list, like their injury report for wide receivers was truly and honestly unbelievable to believe. Like, wow, you cannot have every single receiver on this roster hurt. And yet they do. So they found a way to do this against one of the better teams in the NFC, against one of the greatest quarterbacks in NFL history, and one of the more solid defenses in the league as well. I understand that home field advantage was taken away because they were in London. Maybe the time difference, maybe there was jet lag. I don't know. You can list 1,000 excuses as to why the Green Bay Packers lost this game. But here we are, and the Giants are 4-1. The Giants defense was able to hold Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers to 22 points. They kept Aaron Rodgers out of the end zone in the second half. The safety that they acquired was only because Brian Daboll was trying to drain clock and didn't want to punt the ball back with the risk of a punt return touchdown. Brian Daboll needs to be talked about as a very, very early coach of the year, turning around one of the worst franchises over the last 5 years into a competitive, realistic, solid team in the league. Now, I know that their schedule hasn't necessarily been all that impressive, but against good opponents or against the opponents that they've played, they have, for the most part, kept them under wraps. I mean, Dallas scored 23 points against them. Green Bay scored 22. And if I'm not mistaken, Green Bay, in terms of Aaron Rodgers, is a better quarterback than Cooper Rush. And that's a 1-point difference. So they also limited Derrick Henry, one of the best running backs in the league, to under 100 yards rushing. So you have to look at it in small increments like that. They're making it happen with pretty much no-name personnel outside of maybe their top draft choice, which, of course, I cannot pronounce his name. And I have it here. And I'm like, it's Kavon is it Thibodeau, like Tom Thibodeau, but spelled differently?
Yep.
Okay, so it is Thibodeau.
Yeah, I think it's Kayvon Thibodeau.
Kayvon Thibodeau. So, you know what I mean? Like, the Giants are making do with what they have, which is very, very little in terms of named players. Obviously, Daniel Jones didn't get his 5th year picked up, and he is playing good enough football, similar to Cooper Rush, where he's not necessarily doing anything to win you games, but with his mobility, he's actually doing stuff to keep your drives alive, extending plays. And with Daniel Jones being one of the better rushing quarterbacks in the NFL, he's found ways to make the Giants almost like a dual threat kind of capability, not to the extent of a Lamar Jackson, but you also have to adhere. If he does escape in the pocket, he can make plays with his legs as well. So with that being said, the Giants are 4-1. I'm super happy for them. Shout out to my boy Santino, who's a super big Giants fan. I really do hope that they continue to play at this level because it will be entertaining as the season progresses. If Philly stays up top, if Dallas stays up top, if the Giants stay up top, you're literally talking about 3 teams that could potentially make the playoffs out of one fucking division. Obviously, I know that's not going to happen, but it can. So we'll leave it at that. But man, I thought it was a great game, and I thought the Giants looked really, really good.